Marcus, a homeless teen shivering under a bridge, hears a girl's terrified scream slice through the rain-soaked night. Without thinking, he charges toward the sound, slamming into a group of thieves attacking Lily, the daughter of a notorious biker. Fists crash, blood spills, and Marcus collapses in the gutter, barely conscious. By sunrise, the roar of motorcycles shakes the street. The Hells Angels close in, led by Reaper, Lily's father. His voice cuts through the silence, low and dangerous. "You saved my daughter, now you deal with us." The engines rev, and Marcus realizes his nightmare has only begun. Welcome to the Hells Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will shake your soul in ways you never saw coming. To my faithful subscribers who've been riding with us from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about a broken homeless boy and a feared biker. It's about how an invisible life, scarred by the streets, collides with a ruthless world of engines and leather, and how one desperate choice in a dark alley sets off a chain of loyalty, betrayal, and sacrifice that no one in this city will ever forget. The first punch landed so hard Marcus saw white. 1 second he was just a shadow under a bridge. The next he was crashing into a gang of thieves in a narrow alley, his ribs exploding in pain as knuckles dug deep into bone. The rain came down in sharp, icy lines, blurring the world into streaks of light and darkness as Lily screamed behind him, her voice raw and terrified. He didn't know her name yet. He didn't know who she was. All he knew was that 3 grown men had her pinned against a filthy brick wall, and nobody else was coming. "Stay behind me," Marcus yelled, even though his voice cracked and his legs shook. The biggest thief, a bald guy with a jagged scar cutting across his eyebrow, grabbed Marcus by the collar and slammed him into the wall. Brick tore at his back as the air punched out of his lungs. Marcus gasped, head spinning, the sour smell of stale beer and sweat filling his nose. "Who sent you, rat?" the scarred man hissed. "You want to die over some rich girl?" Marcus spat blood at his shoes. "Let her go." The reply was a fist. It crashed into his face, snapping his head sideways. The alley tilted. His vision doubled, then tripled, but even through the blur, he could see Lily trying to push past another thief, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks, fingers clutching a small, leather backpack like it was her last anchor to safety. "Please, just take the bag," she cried. "Just stop hitting him." Marcus forced his body forward again, stumbling between her and the thieves. He had nothing, no weapon, no strength, just a fragile, stubborn drive that refused to step aside. Lightning cracked in the distance, briefly illuminating the scene. A skinny homeless boy with ripped clothes, bare hands raised. 3 grown men in dark hoodies. A girl shaking so badly her knees looked like they might give out. A boot slammed into Marcus's stomach. He folded over, choking, knees smacking into the wet concrete. Another kick came, this time to his side, and something deep inside his chest popped. He screamed, but the sound drowned in the rain and the laughter of the thieves. "Look at you," one of them sneered. "You're nobody. Nobody's gonna miss you." Marcus's mind flashed, uninvited, to his mother's face. Her tired eyes, the way she used to stroke his hair and whisper, "Even if the world forgets you, Marcus, I won't." But she was gone now. Cancer, debts, foster homes that called him trouble until they pushed him out for good. Nobody had said his name with warmth in years. Nobody except the memory of her. Another fist. This one split his eyebrow. Warm blood slid down into his left eye, dyeing everything red. Marcus swayed on his knees, fingers flattening against the ground as he struggled not to pass out. He could feel Lily behind him, like a trembling heartbeat pressed between his shoulder blades. "You're gonna kill him," she sobbed. "Please, stop. I'll give you anything. Just stop." Scar Eyes grabbed her backpack and ripped it from her hands. The other thief shoved Marcus over, sending his face scraping the pavement. Gravel dug into his cheek. Rainwater pooled under his lips, metallic with the taste of his own blood. "That's it," Scar Eyes muttered. "We got what we came for. Finish the trash and let's go." A hand grabbed Marcus by the hair and yanked his head up. He stared into a pair of cold, black eyes that held no mercy. The thief pulled back his arm for one final, crushing blow. Somewhere, far away, Marcus heard the echo of his mother's voice. "Promise me you'll protect people who can't protect themselves." His arms didn't feel like they belonged to him, but he moved anyway. As the punch came down, Marcus twisted, pulling with what little strength remained, dragging the man off balance. The fist skimmed his jaw instead of caving in his skull. Marcus's hand shot out blindly, clamping onto the man's wrist as they fell together. "Run!" Marcus yelled, voice shredding his throat. "Run now." Lily hesitated for half a second. Just half. But in that half second, she saw his face clearly, broken, drenched, eyes burning with stubborn, hopeless courage. It was the face of someone with nothing left to lose, yet still choosing to stand between her and danger. She bolted. Her footsteps splashed through puddles as she sprinted down the alley, disappearing around the corner, the thieves shouting behind her. "Get her!" one yelled. Scar Eyes cursed and ripped free from Marcus's grip, launching a kick into his ribs that sent fresh agony racing through his body. But Lily was already gone. Now it was just Marcus. The three men turned back to him in unison. No more distractions. No more leverage. Just a half-conscious boy bleeding on the ground. "You just cost us time," Scar Eyes said. "And time is money. That means you owe us." The beating that followed didn't feel real. It felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. Fists, boots, laughter, thunder rolling overhead. Marcus tried to cover his head with his arms, but blows rained down everywhere. Back, sides, legs, chest. Each strike carved away another piece of him. Each impact told him the same thing. You don't matter. He didn't know how long it went on. A minute, 2, an eternity. Eventually, the edges of his world began to darken, closing in like a tunnel. "He's done," one of the thieves muttered. Bootsteps retreated. The rain swallowed their footsteps. Marcus lay still, pressed to the cold concrete, his breath coming in short, broken gasps. His fingers twitched, trying to move, but even that felt like lifting a mountain. He wanted to roll onto his back, to see the sky one more time, but his body refused. Somewhere far away, he could hear sirens. Faint, then louder. Someone must have called the police. Maybe Lily, maybe a neighbor, maybe nobody. Maybe he was just imagining it. His chest burned. Every inhale felt like glass shards scraping his lungs. His lips trembled as he tried to form words. Nothing came out. A single thought cut through the fog. At least she got away. If you would never ignore a scream like this, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The sirens grew louder, echoing between the buildings, clashing with the rain and rolling thunder. Blue and red lights began to flicker at the mouth of the alley, blurred through the curtain of rain. Marcus tried to move his hand, to raise even one finger and show he was still alive. His muscles refused. He felt the warm spread of blood under his cheek turning cold as it mixed with rainwater. His vision faded in and out, like someone was dimming the world. Then, under the wail of sirens, another sound cut through, a deep, feral growl, low and distant at first. The ground beneath him vibrated faintly. Marcus frowned, forehead pressing harder into the concrete. Was that engines? Yes, engines. More than one. The rumble grew louder, rolling through the streets like a pack of thunder hounds. The sirens were close, but the motorcycles were closer. He heard them turn into the alleyway street. 1, 2, 3, more. The engines roared and then idled, snarling in the rain-soaked night. Boots thudded on pavement. Heavy, confident, dangerous. Marcus's heart stuttered. He couldn't lift his head, but he could see shapes approaching. Blurry black figures cutting through the flashing blue and red haze. Leather, boots, the glint of chains. The police car slowed at the far end of the street, lights spinning, but the engines had already formed a wall of sound. Voices rose in argument, officers shouting, men answering in rough, controlled tones. Marcus couldn't make out the words, only the tension. A pair of boots stopped right next to his face. Big, black, scarred from years of road and trouble. Rain dripped from the cuffs of heavy jeans. The scent of gasoline and cigarettes hung thick in the air. A shadow crouched down. A gloved hand grabbed Marcus by the jaw and turned his face up gently but firmly. Through his blurry vision, Marcus saw a man's silhouette, broad shoulders, leather cut, patches gleaming, and on the chest, barely visible through the rain, an emblem of a skull wreathed in flame. The man's voice was low and rough, like gravel dragged over metal. "This the kid?" Another voice answered from behind him, higher, shaky, on the edge of breaking. "Yes, that's him. That's the boy. He saved me. Lily." Marcus's mind clawed through the haze, trying to focus on her voice. She was here. Why was she here? Why wasn't she somewhere safe? The man holding his jaw leaned in closer. Even through the darkness, his eyes burned with a strange mix of fury and something else Marcus couldn't name. "Look at me," the man said. Marcus tried. His eyelids fought to stay open. The world tilted. For a moment, the man's face came into focus. Hard lines, a thick beard streaked with gray, a thin scar across his lip. Power radiated off him like heat from an engine. "My name is Reaper," he said quietly. "You stood between my daughter and death." "Daughter?" Marcus's gaze dragged past him, toward Lily. She stood behind the circle of men in leather, arms wrapped around herself, makeup streaked down her cheeks, eyes locked on Marcus like she was afraid he might disappear if she blinked. Marcus tried, but the word dissolved into a cough. Blood flooded his mouth. Reaper's grip tightened slightly, but not in cruelty, in assessment, as if he was measuring how close Marcus was to slipping away. Rain pattered on his shoulders, dripping from his beard. Reaper turned his head slightly, speaking loud enough for his men to hear. "No one touches him. Not the cops, not anyone. He's ours now." Engines revved in the background, a chorus of steel beasts ready to move on command. The police still hovered at the edge of the scene, their presence swallowed by the raw, intimidating aura of the bikers. If you're still watching and your heart's racing, comment where you're watching from. Don't stay invisible like Marcus. Marcus tried to understand. "Ours?" What did that even mean? He wanted to ask, but his mouth wouldn't cooperate. His body felt like lead, his thoughts thick and slow. Reaper leaned closer, his voice dropping to a rumbling whisper that cut through the storm. "You saved my daughter," he said. "That means your life doesn't belong to the streets anymore." He paused, eyes drilling into Marcus's. "From this moment on," Reaper growled, "you belong to us." The engines roared in unison, drowning out the sirens, the rain, the world. Marcus's vision finally gave way, the last thing he saw being Reaper's burning stare and Lily's trembling silhouette. Then everything went black. Marcus woke to the sound of engines, not sirens. The roar rolled through his skull like thunder trapped in a cage, vibrating in his bones before his eyes even opened. The air smelled of gasoline, oil, and cigarette smoke, heavy and sharp, nothing like the sour damp of the bridge where he usually slept. Light stabbed through his eyelids. He flinched, a groan escaping before he could stop it. Pain fired through his ribs and face, a brutal reminder of fists and boots, and an alley he hoped he'd never see again. "Easy, kid," a rough voice said. "You start thrashing, you'll rip those stitches." "Stitches?" Marcus forced his eyes open. A bare bulb swung above him, casting harsh light over a metal table cluttered with tools, bandages, and bloody gauze. He lay on a torn leather couch, jacket stripped off, shirt cut open, chest wrapped in fresh white bandages already stained pink near his ribs. He turned his head and hissed as his neck protested. A woman in her 30s stood nearby, tattoos curling up her arms like vines. She held a needle and thread, her gloved fingers steady. "Almost done," she muttered. "You heal like trash if I rush this." Behind her, the room stretched into a cavernous garage. Rows of motorcycles lined the concrete floor, chrome and black metal gleaming under fluorescent lights. Banners and patches with the same emblem, skull wreathed in flame, hung on the walls. Men in leather vests moved in and out of the space, voices low, boots heavy. Marcus swallowed. His throat felt dry and raw. "Where am I?" The woman snorted. "Where do you think?" "Church." He frowned. Church. This didn't look like any church he had ever seen. She noticed his confusion and rolled her eyes. "Clubhouse, genius. Hell's Angels. You're in their house now." The words dropped like a weight into his stomach. Hell's Angels. The name alone carried a reputation. Stories whispered under bridges and in shelters about bikers you didn't cross if you wanted to keep your teeth. His heart started pounding. "Why am I here?" Before she could answer, the garage doors at the far end rumbled open. Cold air gusted in, carrying the smell of wet asphalt. Engines growled as several bikes rolled inside, headlights slicing through the dimness before cutting off one by one. The room shifted. Conversations died. Heads turned. Reaper walked in like the storm itself. He wore the same leather cut Marcus remembered seeing through the haze in the alley, patches stitched over his chest and back, his presence pulling every eye without a word. Lily walked behind him, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, face pale, eyes fixed on Marcus like he was the only thing holding her together. Reaper's gaze swept the room once before landing on the couch. On Marcus. The woman stitching him up stepped aside without being told. Reaper moved closer, each step slow and deliberate, boots echoing against the concrete. He stopped right beside the couch, looming over Marcus, shadow swallowing the light. Up close, the lines on his face looked deeper, carved by years of road and violence. "You're awake," Reaper said. Marcus tried to push himself up, instinctively wanting to sit, to shrink the size difference, but the pain in his ribs flared so sharp he almost blacked out. He fell back with a gasp. Reaper watched him, expression unreadable. "Stay down. You're held together by string and stubbornness." Lily stepped in beside her father, fingers twisting in the hem of her hoodie. "Dad?" He shouldn't be talking yet. He lost a lot of blood. Marcus blinked. Hearing her stand next to Reaper, calling him Dad, solidified what he'd only half understood in the alley. "You're his daughter," Marcus rasped. Lily nodded slowly. "I'm Lily. You saved my life." The room reacted to that. Some bikers looked at Marcus with something like respect. Others looked like they wished he hadn't survived. The air thickened with unspoken judgments, the kind of tension that made every breath feel dangerous. Reaper didn't look away from Marcus. "You remember what I told you before you passed out?" The words floated back through Marcus's fogged memories. "You belong to us." He swallowed hard. Something about belonging. Reaper nodded once. "Good. Your brain's not completely scrambled." He crouched down so his face was level with Marcus's, his eyes dark and steady. "Here's the truth," Reaper said. "You stood between my daughter and 3 men who meant to hurt her. You bled for her. You could have run. You didn't. In my world, that means something." Marcus's heart thudded harder. Does that mean you'll let me go?" A low chuckle rippled from somewhere behind Reaper. One of the bikers, a tall man with a snake tattoo coiling up his neck, smirked. "Listen to the kid," the man said. "Thinks this is a charity." Reaper didn't smile. "You're alive because you did something most people wouldn't. That makes you valuable. But it also means you're not invisible anymore." He leaned in closer, voice dropping. "And once my club sees you, they don't just forget you." Marcus's mouth went dry. "I didn't do it for anything. I just couldn't walk away." Reaper studied him for a long moment, as if weighing that answer against everything he'd seen in his life. "Exactly," Reaper said finally. "That's the problem. Men who act without thinking, they're dangerous. To themselves. To others. To me." Lily stepped forward, eyes flashing. "Dad, he's not dangerous. He's hurt. He saved me." Reaper's gaze snapped to her. "And you think that cancels out the rules?" Silence fell around them. Even the bikers watching from a distance seemed to hold their breath. Reaper turned back to Marcus. "You're in my debt. That's a fact. Medical care. Protection. A roof over your head. That's not free." Marcus's stomach sank. He'd expected gratitude, maybe a ride back to the streets. Debt hadn't crossed his mind. I don't have anything, Marcus whispered. No money, no family, nothing you'd want. Reaper's lips twitched, not quite a smile. That's where you're wrong. You've got something this club respects, guts, and a clean slate with every gang in this city. No one knows your name. You're a ghost. He straightened, voice hardening. So here's how this works. You stay here until I decide otherwise. You work when you can stand. You follow orders. You don't talk to cops. You don't bring trouble to my door. In return, you don't freeze under a bridge or die in an alley. Marcus stared at him. His chest ached from more than just broken ribs. And if I say no? Snake Tattoo laughed. Then we drop you back where we found you. This time, nobody steps in when someone kicks your teeth in. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Lily's jaw clenched. That's not fair. Reaper's eyes burned. Fair. He gestured around them. This isn't a fairy tale, Lily. He stepped into our world when he stepped in front of you. There is no fair here. There's survival. There's loyalty. There's debt. Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the garage pressing down on him. Staying meant living in a cage built from engines, leather, and unspoken rules. Leaving meant crawling back into a city that had almost killed him once already. If your chest feels tight imagining this choice, like and subscribe so you don't miss what he does next. Reaper took a breath, as if giving Marcus a final sliver of control. You've got two options, Marcus. You walk out of here with nothing but scars, or you stay, pay your debt, and maybe walk out one day as more than a ghost. Lily looked at Marcus, eyes pleading. If he goes back out there, he'll die. Somewhere inside, Marcus knew she was right. The bridge, the cold, the hunger, they were all waiting for him like old friends. Out there, he was nobody. In here, he was something. Not safe. Not free, but seen. He closed his eyes. The memory of scarred fists and Lily's scream flashed behind them. He hadn't thought. He had just moved. When he opened his eyes again, Reaper was still watching him, unblinking. I don't know your rules, Marcus said quietly. I don't know your world. But I know one thing. I don't want to die under that bridge. His voice shook, but he forced the next words out anyway. So, I'll stay. I'll pay whatever debt you think I owe. The garage seemed to exhale. Some of the bikers nodded. A few smirked. One shook his head like he was watching a slow-motion car crash. Reaper didn't show any reaction. He just nodded once, as if Marcus had given the only answer that ever truly existed. Then listen close, Reaper said. From this moment on, you're under my protection and my control. You don't speak about what happened to Lily to anyone outside this club. You don't touch anything that isn't yours. You don't disappear without telling me. You break those rules. He paused, letting the meaning hang there. And I won't be the one you're most afraid of. The woman with the tattoos stepped back in, cutting the remaining thread and patting Marcus's bandaged side. He's patched up. He needs rest, not lectures. Reaper ignored her. He looked at Lily. You wanted him alive. You got your wish. But understand this, Lily, every favor has a cost. Lily swallowed hard, guilt flickering across her face. She glanced at Marcus with a mixture of gratitude and worry, like she'd just watched him step onto thin ice. Reaper straightened and turned away. Give him a bed in the back room. Tomorrow, if he can stand, he starts earning his keep. Snake Tattoo grinned. Welcome to the family, kid. The way he said family made Marcus wonder if he'd just traded one kind of death for another. Two bikers moved to lift him. Pain flared, white-hot, as they carefully hauled him off the couch and half-carried, half-dragged him toward a dim hallway at the back of the garage. The world tilted, edges smearing, but he caught one last glimpse of Lily. She stood alone in the middle of the concrete floor, arms wrapped around herself, watching him disappear into the shadows. As the door to the back room creaked open, Marcus heard Reaper's voice one more time, low and final. You wanted a life, kid. Let's see if you can survive the one you just chose. Marcus didn't sleep that first night in the clubhouse. Not really. The mattress they dumped him on was thin and smelled faintly of oil and sweat, shoved against a concrete wall in a windowless back room. A single strip light buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make the shadows twitch. His ribs throbbed under tight bandages every time he breathed, and the muffled roar of engines and laughter bled through the walls like ghosts refusing to shut up. He lay on his back, staring at the stained ceiling, trying to process the last 12 hours. An alley. 3 thieves. Lily's scream. Reaper's eyes. You belong to us. The words echoed louder than the bikes. Belong. No one had used that word about him in years. The door creaked open. Marcus flinched, instinctively tensing, pain flaring down his side. Snake Tattoo stepped in, filling the doorway with his tall frame, leather cut hanging open, ink crawling up his neck like something alive. Behind him, the hallway light carved his face into hard edges. Rise and shine, hero, Snake said. Boss wants you. It's still dark, Marcus muttered. His voice sounded rough, like it had been dragged over gravel. Snake shrugged. Out here, the clock's whatever Reaper says it is. He tossed a black hoodie onto the bed. It was a size too big, but warmer than the shredded t-shirt they'd cut off him. Marcus pushed himself upright, teeth gritted. Every movement sent pain firing through his ribs, but Snake just watched, unimpressed. What if I can't walk? Marcus asked. Then you crawl, Snake said. But you move. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, feet touching the cold concrete. The room swayed for a second. He sucked in a slow breath, then another, and forced himself to stand. The hoodie dragged over his bandages, and he bit back a groan. Snake's eyes flicked over him, measuring. Good. At least you're not completely useless. He turned and walked out. Marcus followed, one hand pressed lightly to his ribs, every step a reminder of the alley and the price he'd already paid. The hallway opened into the main garage. It felt different now than it had when he first saw it from the couch. Then, he'd been half-conscious, everything blurred. Now, pain sharpened his senses. Rows of bikes stood like metal beasts at rest, chrome skulls and flames catching the light. The air hummed with low music, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling. A few bikers lounged at a table, playing cards, their voices dropping as Marcus stepped into view. Lily stood near one of the bikes, arms folded, watching. When she saw him, her shoulders sagged in obvious relief, then straightened quickly, like she didn't want anyone to notice. Reaper was by the workbench, back turned, examining a map spread over the scarred wood. He didn't look up when Marcus approached. Snake gave Marcus a little shove between the shoulder blades. He's here. Reaper's head tilted slightly, then he turned. Those same cold, assessing eyes locked onto Marcus, running from his face to his unsteady stance to the hand guarding his ribs. You're on your feet, Reaper said. Good. Marcus swallowed. You said, I start earning my keep. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of Reaper's mouth. Eager, aren't you? Just don't want to die under a bridge, Marcus said quietly. A flicker, maybe approval, maybe something else, passed through Reaper's gaze, then vanished. Come here, Reaper said. Marcus stepped closer to the workbench. The map was a street grid of the city, hand-drawn lines, and circles marking certain blocks. One of the circles looked painfully close to the area where he used to sleep. Reaper tapped a spot near the docks. We've been having problems here. Someone's been skimming shipments. Little things at first. Tools. Parts. Nothing big enough to start a war over. But it's escalating. Marcus frowned. What does that have to do with me? Reaper looked at him like the answer should be obvious. You're not patched in. No colors, no history. To most people out there, you're just a homeless kid who got in the wrong fight. That makes you useful. Snake stepped up beside Reaper, arms folded. We think someone at the docks is feeding info to the same crew that jumped Lily. Marcus's chest tightened. The thieves from the alley? Reaper nodded once. They weren't random. They knew my route. They knew my girl would be exposed. Lily flinched, guilt flickering across her face. Reaper continued. We want to know who's selling us out. But we can't walk in there asking questions with these on our backs. He tapped the patch on his vest. We're too loud. Too obvious. And I'm not, Marcus said. Now you're getting it, Snake said. Reaper slid a small, battered phone across the table. You go down there. You keep your head down. You listen. You see who's meeting who. You don't play hero. You don't pick fights. You observe. You report back to me. Marcus stared at the phone, but didn't pick it up yet. What if they recognize me? The thieves. Good, Reaper said. then we know we're right. And if they don't, then you still see who they're talking to. Marcus hesitated. I'm not trained for this. I'm not a spy. Reaper's eyes hardened. You're alive because you didn't think, remember? You moved. Now I'm giving you something to think about. You want this roof, this protection, this second chance? This is the cost. The word dead hovered, unspoken, in the air between them. Lily stepped forward, tension tightening her voice. He's still hurt. You can't just throw him into something like that. Reaper turned his head slowly. You wanted him alive, Lily. You said he deserved better than the streets. He does, she said. But this is better than the morgue. Reaper cut in. This is how he stops being a victim and starts being useful. Marcus felt every eye on him again. Part of him wanted to scream that he'd already done enough, already bled enough. Another part remembered the bridge, the cold, the years of being stepped over like trash. Reaper watched the war play out on his face. No one here gets a free ride. Not even you. Especially not you. You owe us. Oh, debt. Belong. The words twisted together like barbed wire. Marcus reached out and picked up the phone. It felt heavier than it looked. What am I supposed to say if they ask who I am? Snake smirked. You say you're just looking for work. Loading, unloading, whatever. They won't look twice at a kid like you. That's the point. Reaper slid a folded piece of paper across next. This is the name of a contact who owes me. He works security at the docks. You find him. Show him this. He'll get you inside without questions. Marcus took the paper with trembling fingers. And if it all goes wrong, then you improvise, Reaper said. You were good at that in the alley. Marcus met his eyes. I almost died in that alley. Reaper's expression didn't soften. You didn't. That's why you're standing here. Don't waste it. Behind them, the garage door rumbled as someone rolled another bike in. The sound made Marcus's head pound. Lily stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. Yes, he does, Reaper snapped, not bothering to pretend he hadn't heard. The second he stepped between you and those thieves, his life stopped being simple. He pointed at Marcus. You leave in 20 minutes. You get one of my old jackets to keep you from freezing, and that's it. No escort. No backup. We see who you really are today. If your heart sinks at him being sent alone like this, like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens. The conversation ended there. Reaper turned away, signaling he was done. Snake jerked his head toward the back corridor. Jackets in the locker room. Move. Marcus walked away on unsteady legs. The weight of the phone and the folded paper felt like shackles. In the locker room, he found an old, faded denim jacket with frayed cuffs. No patch, no colors, just enough warmth to keep the wind from cutting through his bandages. As he shrugged it on, Lily slipped in, closing the door behind her. Marcus, she said softly. He didn't turn right away. You shouldn't be here. Your dad isn't always right, she cut in. He faced her. In the harsh fluorescent light, she looked even more fragile than she had in the alley, bruises blooming faintly along her jaw where one of the thieves had grabbed her. I'm sorry, she blurted. This is my fault. If I hadn't taken that route, if I hadn't. Stop, Marcus said. Those guys made a choice. I made a choice. Your dad's making his. None of that is on you. She swallowed. He's using you, Marcus. He gave a hollow half-smile. Better to be used than thrown away, right? That's not a life, she said. That's surviving. He shrugged, wincing. Surviving is all I've ever known. Maybe I'll figure out the rest later. She stepped closer, eyes searching his face. Just be careful. If something feels wrong down there, leave. I don't care what my dad says. Your life isn't a test. He looked at her for a long moment. It was for a long time. I just kept failing quietly where nobody could see. Lily's eyes shimmered. You didn't fail that night. Marcus looked away before the weight of her gaze could crack him open. I'll be back, he said. If I'm not, well, at least I'll die doing something that mattered. Don't joke about that, she whispered. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes, then brushed past her gently and walked out. The cold slapped him in the face as he stepped into the early morning air. The sky was a dull gray, the kind that promised a long, wet day. A bike waited near the curb. Not one of the big, snarling monsters, but a smaller, older machine that looked like it had seen better years. Snake sat on a crate nearby, smoking. You ride? Marcus hesitated. A little. Messed around with a busted scooter once. Snake smirked. Good enough. This one's gentle. Mostly. He flicked the cigarette away and pushed off the crate. You're not one of us. You don't ride with us. You go alone. You come back alone. Understand? Marcus nodded. And kid? Snake added, voice dropping lower. If you even think about running, remember, this city is small when we're the ones looking for you. Marcus met his eyes. If I was going to run, I wouldn't have stayed. Snake considered that, then nodded once. Fair point. Marcus swung a leg over the bike, his ribs screaming. He gripped the handlebars, feeling the machine vibrate under him as he turned the key and brought it to life. The engine's growl was weaker than the others he'd heard, but it was still power, still movement. The clubhouse shrank in the cracked side mirror as he pulled away, Lily's figure a small silhouette in the doorway until the corner swallowed her. As he merged into the waking city, wind cutting across his bruised face, Marcus realized something that scared him more than the docks, the thieves, or even Reaper. For the first time in years, he wasn't drifting. He was being sent. And whoever was waiting at the docks would decide whether that new direction led toward a life or another kind of death. Marcus didn't expect the docks to feel like a different planet. Cold wind came in off the black water, slicing through his borrowed jacket and turning every breath into a sharp ache in his ribs. Cranes groaned overhead, chains rattled, forklifts beeped, and the entire place pulsed with the heavy rhythm of work that never really slept. He killed the small bike's engine and let the vibration fade, the silence replaced by truck horns and shouted orders. Sodium lights painted the world in a dirty yellow, and everything smelled like salt, diesel, and rust. For a second, he just stood there, fingers resting on the handlebars, fighting the urge to turn around and ride back to the clubhouse. Back to Reaper's hard rules and Lily's worried eyes. Back to a world that at least had walls. Instead, he swallowed his fear and stepped away from the bike. Reaper's words beat in his head. You're my eyes. You don't play hero. You don't run. Marcus slipped his hands into his jacket pockets, feeling the cheap phone and the folded paper with Derek's name. Find the contact. Watch. Listen. A security guard spotted him almost immediately, a stocky guy in a reflective vest, flashlight bouncing at his hip. Hey, the guard barked. This isn't street parking, kid. You lost. Marcus forced his shoulders to relax. First day? I'm looking for Derek Cole. The guard squinted. Derek? What for? He said he had a spot for me. Night work. The guard muttered something under his breath about people not telling him anything, then jerked his thumb toward a squat building by the fence. Security office. Glass door. Try not to look like you're about to rob the place. Marcus mumbled a thanks and headed that way, heart pounding harder with each step. The office glowed weakly, fluorescent lights buzzing behind grimy glass. He could see two figures through the door, one sitting at a desk, the other leaning against a cabinet. He knocked. Yeah, someone called. Marcus opened the door. The room smelled like burnt coffee and wet jackets. A man in his 40s sat behind the desk, sleeves rolled up, a salt and pepper beard framing a face that had seen too many long nights. His badge read D. Cole. You Derek? Marcus asked. The man's eyes flicked over him, taking in the bruises, the stiff posture. Depends who's asking. Marcus took out the folded paper and held it up. Reaper sent me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The other guards straightened away from the cabinet, watching Marcus with new interest. Derek's gaze sharpened. Close the door, Derek said. Marcus did. Let me see that, Derek added. Marcus stepped forward and handed him the paper. Derek unfolded it, glanced at Reaper's handwriting, then let out a slow breath. You look like hell, Derek said. Reaper do that to you? Thieves, Marcus answered. I stepped between them and his daughter. Derek studied his face for a moment. And he didn't let you die on the pavement. That's unusually generous of him. He said I owed him, Marcus replied. Derek snorted softly. That sounds more like Reaper. The other guard spoke up. What's he doing here, Derek? Derek didn't take his eyes off Marcus. He's here because someone's been opening doors they shouldn't. And Reaper doesn't like open doors. He leaned back in his chair. You know what you've walked into, kid? I know enough to be scared, Marcus said. Good, Derek said. Fear means you might listen. He pointed to the security monitors mounted on the wall, grainy views of gates, loading bays, container rows, the parking lot. We've had small things go missing from shipments connected to Reaper's people. Little stuff. But little stuff sends big messages. Someone here is helping the same guys who jumped Lily, Marcus said quietly. That's the theory, Derek replied. Reaper can't come down here himself without starting a war. He needs eyes that no one recognizes. Eyes like mine, Marcus said. Exactly, Derek said. You're no one to them. That's your advantage. Marcus glanced at the screens again. So what do you want me to do? There's a container in Bay 4 tonight that's tied to Reaper's routes, Derek said. If someone's feeding info, they'll be sniffing around it. You'll walk the catwalks, act like a board guard. You see anything weird, off-the-book conversations, people avoiding cameras, familiar faces, you tell me. I'll make sure Reaper hears it. And if I see one of the men from the alley? Marcus asked. Derek's jaw tightened. Then you definitely don't play hero. You do not go down there. You do not confront. You watch. You survive. You understand. Marcus's fists clenched on his knees. They nearly killed me. They were going to. And they might finish the job if you rush in like an idiot, Derek cut in. Reaper didn't send you here to be a martyr. He sent you here to be useful. Marcus bit the inside of his cheek and nodded. When do I start? Shift changes in 20, Derek said. You get a vest and a radio. You move like you belong here. The more invisible you are, the more you see. He stood, opened a metal locker, and tossed Marcus a faded security vest. Put that on. You break it, you buy it. The vest sagged on Marcus's narrow shoulders, but it gave him just enough authority to blend in. As Derek pinned a cheap badge to his chest, he added quietly, one more thing. Tim, the guy you saw in here? Watch him. He likes money more than rules. Is he the leak? Marcus asked. If I knew, this would be a different conversation, Derek said. Go. The catwalks were colder than the floor. Metal grating shuddered under Marcus's boots as he walked his assigned route above the warehouse, the wind sneaking through every gap and seam. Below, workers moved like puzzle pieces. Forklifts darting, pallets shifting, voices bouncing off steel walls. Bay 4 was easy to spot. The container Derek had mentioned sat half-shadowed near the center, workers weaving around it with a mix of urgency and tension Marcus could feel even from above. He moved slowly, trying to look bored. His ribs ached with every step, but adrenaline kept him upright. He'd almost convinced himself nothing would happen, that this was just Reaper testing him, seeing if he'd follow orders. When he saw him, scar across his eyebrow, Marcus's breath caught. There was no mistaking that face. Scar Eyes stood near Bay 4, hands in his pockets, casual in a way that screamed wrong. His mind flared back to the alley. The fist, the boot, the words, the blood. You're nobody. Nobody's gonna miss you. Marcus's hand shot to his radio, fingers hovering over the button, Derek's warning pounding in his skull. Don't play hero. Below, Scar Eyes drifted closer to a worker with a clipboard. A skinny man in a neon vest, eyes already darting like he was guilty of something. They leaned in toward each other. The worker's shoulders tightened. Scar Eyes slipped something into his hand. Money. The worker hesitated, then pocketed it, pointing toward the container like he was giving directions. Marcus moved a little farther down the catwalk, trying to keep the pair in view. The metal creaked under his weight, but no one looked up. He pressed the radio button. Derek, you copy? Static hissed in his ear, then Derek's voice came through. Go. I see one of them, Marcus whispered. Scar over his eye, dark jacket. He's paying off a worker at Bay 4. You sure it's the same guy? Derek asked. Marcus's ribs pulsed with phantom pain at the memory. I'm sure. He helped put me in the hospital. Stay put, Derek said. Do not go down there. I'm on my way. Scar Eyes clapped the worker on the shoulder, then peeled away, heading toward a side door half hidden by stacked pallets. He didn't hurry. Men like him never thought they needed to. Marcus tried to track both him and the worker at once. His pulse was buzzing in his ears. He almost missed the footsteps behind him. A voice spoke from the shadows of the catwalk. Busy night for a new guy. Marcus spun. Tim stood a few paces away, hands in his pockets, cigarette dangling from his lips. His eyes were sharp, not lazy like before. I'm just walking my route, Marcus said. Funny, Tim replied. Your route seems very interested in Bay 4. Marcus forced a shrug. Derek told me to keep an eye on it. Tim took a step closer. The catwalk suddenly felt too narrow, the railing too low. Derek tells you a lot of things, huh? Like name-dropping Reaper the second you walk in. He asked who sent me. Marcus said. I told him the truth. Truth can get you killed around here, Tim said. He moved even closer. Marcus had to resist the urge to back away, knowing he'd run out of metal sooner than Tim would. Below them, a forklift beeped loudly as it reversed. The sound covered the moment Tim's hand shot out and grabbed the front of Marcus's vest, pulling him forward until their faces were inches apart. You see anything tonight? Tim asked softly. Marcus's fingers curled around the cold railing behind him. Just work. Trucks. Containers. Try again, Tim murmured. His grip tightened. You recognize anyone you shouldn't? He knows, Marcus realized. Or at least suspects. His mind raced. If he told the truth, Tim might silence him before Derek even got close. If he lied and Tim already had eyes below, he'd know. Either way, one wrong word could send him over the edge of this catwalk. If your chest tightened imagining that drop, like and subscribe so you don't miss his next move. Tim's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I don't like surprises, kid. Especially ones wearing borrowed vests. So let's make this simple. Either you're blind, or you're dead. Which is it? The warehouse noise blurred into a dull roar. Marcus's world narrowed to Tim's grip, the emptiness behind his heels, and the echo of every choice that had dragged him here. Stepping into that alley, accepting Reaper's debt, riding to this place thinking he could just watch. He'd wanted to stop being invisible. Now, one man with a crooked badge and greedy eyes might decide whether he vanished forever. Marcus didn't blink. If he did, he was afraid Tim might shove him straight off the catwalk. The metal railing dug into his back, cold and unforgiving, the empty air yawning behind him like a hungry mouth. Tim's fist was tight in his vest, hauling him just high enough that his toes barely scraped the grate. Below, forklifts beeped and men shouted, completely unaware that one wrong word could turn Marcus into a broken heap on the concrete. I'm waiting, Tim said softly, his breath hot and sour. Blind or dead? Marcus's mind raced. If he told the truth, that he'd seen Scar Eyes pay off the clipboard worker, Tim might panic, might silence him before Derek or Reaper ever got the name. If he lied and Tim already knew exactly what had happened, he'd smell the bluff a mile away. He needed a third option. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus said, forcing his voice to shake just enough to sound young and scared. I'm just doing what Derek told me. Walk, watch, report if something explodes. That's it. Tim's eyes narrowed. You didn't see anyone? Just guys moving boxes, Marcus said. They all looked the same down there to me. Tim studied his face like he was reading a file. Marcus kept his gaze just unfocused enough to sell the lie. Too intense, and he'd look like he was hiding something. Too weak, and Tim would think he was useless. Somewhere in the middle, he had to look like exactly what he pretended to be. Scared, but ignorant. Seconds stretched. The wind whistled through the gaps in the warehouse walls. Tim's grip tightened, then loosened. He dropped Marcus abruptly. Marcus's feet hit the grate hard, sending a fresh spike of pain through his ribs. Good, Tim said. Let Derek drag you around like a puppy. The more you don't see, the longer you live. Marcus swallowed. I don't want trouble. I just want the job. Tim smirked. Jobs don't fall from the sky around here, kid. Somebody wants you here, which means somebody can take you away. Remember that. He slapped the front of Marcus's vest once, not gently, then turned and walked down the catwalk, boots ringing on the metal as he disappeared into the shadows. Marcus stood there, heart hammering, fingers still clamped around the railing until his knuckles ached. He'd lied. He'd disobeyed Derek's instruction to tell me everything. But if he'd opened his mouth up there, he wasn't sure he'd still be breathing. The radio crackled. "Marcus," Derek's voice said. "Where are you?" Marcus forced his fingers to unclench and brought the radio to his mouth. "Still on the catwalk," he whispered. "Near Bay 4. You see anything else?" Derek asked. Marcus glanced down. Scar Eyes was gone now, swallowed by some side exit. The clipboard worker had drifted farther into the warehouse, trying too hard to look normal. "Just movement around the container," Marcus said. "Nothing obvious." A pause crackled through the line. "Stay put," Derek said finally. "Shift ends in an hour. Then we talk." The hour crawled. Marcus kept walking his route, eyes scanning, but his mind replayed the same beats. Scar Eye's face, the money-changing hands, Tim's grip at his vest, the question, blind or dead. By the time Derek called him down, Marcus's legs were shaking from more than just the cold. Inside the security office, Derek closed the door and pulled the blinds halfway down. The fluorescent light made the lines on his face look deeper than before. "Tim said you're jumpy," Derek said, leaning back against the desk. Marcus forced a humorless smile. "I almost fell off the catwalk. Wind caught me." "Wind, huh?" Derek asked. "You sure the wind had fingers?" Marcus's jaw tightened. Derek was sharper than most. "You heard us," Marcus said. "I heard enough," Derek replied. "Couldn't see his hands, but I saw you pinned against the rail." Marcus lowered himself into the chair, ribs protesting. "If I'd said anything, I don't think I'd be standing here." Derek stared at him for a long moment. "So you saw something?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "One of the men who attacked Lily." Scar across his eyebrow. "He paid off a worker near Bay 4. Skinny guy, clipboard, neon vest. After that, he headed for the side door. Tim found me up on the catwalk and started asking questions." Derek's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened. "You think Tim's involved?" "Reaper told me to observe, not accuse," Marcus said. "But Tim knew Reaper's name before I said it, and he knew exactly where to find me." Derek nodded slowly. "Tim's been here longer than most of the containers. Too long, maybe. But if he's dirty, he's careful. He wouldn't risk throwing you off a catwalk unless he felt cornered." Marcus shifted in his seat. "So what now? Do we tell Reaper?" "Call him. I don't want Lily walking into something she doesn't see coming." Derek moved to the monitors and stared at the screens, jaw working. "Reaper doesn't need much to justify making a scene. If I call him and say, 'Your kid says Tim smells wrong,' people will bleed whether we're right or not." He turned back. "You want to help her? Then we need more than suspicion." "How do we get that?" Marcus asked. Derek's gaze dropped to the radio on Marcus's vest. "You remember what Reaper said when he sent you here?" "Be his eyes," Marcus said. "I see," Derek replied. "But ears? They hear what people say when they think no one's listening." He opened a drawer, reached in, and pulled out a tiny black device, no bigger than a coin. He set it on the desk between them. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "Insurance," Derek said. "Mike, short range, good battery. You plant this somewhere Tim thinks is his." Marcus's stomach twisted. "You want me to spy on him?" "I want you to prove who he is," Derek said. "If I'm wrong, we clear his name and move on. If I'm right, Reaper will get his traitor gift wrapped." Marcus stared at the little piece of plastic and wire. He'd survived alleys, foster homes, the streets, but this felt like a different kind of risk. This wasn't just about fists and knives. This was about getting between wolves in their own den. "What if he catches me?" Marcus asked quietly. "Then he'll try to scare you again," Derek said. "But he already did that. You're still here." He pushed the mic closer. "I'm not going to lie to you, kid. You do this, you're stepping fully into Reaper's world. There's no drifting back out." Marcus thought of Lily's face when he'd left the clubhouse, the way her fear wasn't just for herself anymore. "If I don't do this," Marcus said, "does Tim keep feeding info to the same men who tried to drag her into a van?" The question answered itself. He picked up the mic. It felt colder than the room. "Where?" he asked. "Tim's locker," Derek said. "He thinks it's safe. He likes to talk on the phone in there on his breaks. Plant it, walk away, pretend you've never seen it." "How do I even get into his locker?" Derek shrugged. "Night shift's small. People get lazy. Locker room door sticks if you don't slam it. Tim leaves it open more than he thinks. You wait. You watch." You move when no one's looking. Marcus swallowed. You've done this before. I've lasted this long, Derek said. That doesn't happen by accident. For a moment, they just looked at each other. One man bound to Reaper by old debts, one boy bound by a new one. You don't have to like this, Derek said. You just have to decide if you're the kind of person who walks away now. Marcus thought of the bridge, the cold, the feeling of being nothing. Then he thought of Reaper's voice. You belong to us now. And Lily's, if you don't want to do this. He closed his hand around the mic. Tell me when his break is. Tim's break came near the end of the shift. Marcus knew because he'd started to feel the rhythm of the place. The way workers slowed when their backs hurt. The way certain conversations always happen near certain pillars. The way Tim's shoulders relaxed exactly 5 minutes before he disappeared for a cigarette. Marcus waited. He walked his route, tried to look bored, forced his heart not to sprint ahead of him. Then he saw it. Tim heading toward the locker room, shoulders loose, whistling something tuneless. The door swung shut behind him, but not all the way. Just like Derek had said, the frame caught, leaving a narrow, dark gap. Marcus's fingers brushed the mic in his pocket. His palms were slick. Now or never. He left the catwalks and took the stairs down, the echo of his footsteps lost under the hum of the warehouse. He walked like he belonged, like he was just another tired night guard heading for the bathroom. The locker room door loomed. Voices floated from inside. Tim's low murmur, the hiss of a lighter, the soft crackle of a cigarette. Marcus paused, counted to 3, then pushed the door gently. It creaked just enough to let him slide through without slamming. Rows of dented metal lockers lined the walls, the air thick with the smell of sweat and smoke. Tim stood near the back, phone to his ear, facing away, one hand braced against the metal. Yeah, I told you it's handled, Tim said, voice low. Containers flagged. Your boy already got the nod. Stop calling me at work. Marcus's pulse hammered. He slid along the nearest row, staying low, using open lockers as cover. He didn't need every word, just enough. You'll get your cut, Tim muttered. Just make sure your guys don't get sloppy like last time. Reaper sniffing. Marcus caught a glimpse of his locker. Door cracked open. Tim's name scratched into the paint. This was it. Tim turned slightly, back still to Marcus, but his angle shifted. Marcus froze, breath held. If I go down, I start talking, Tim said. You want that? Then let's keep things smooth. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. Marcus moved. 2 steps, silent as he could. His hand slipped into his pocket, fingers closing around the mic. He reached for the locker door, eased it open a fraction more. Inside, jackets, a half-crumpled pack of cigarettes, a small shelf with a battered lunchbox, and a folded piece of paper. He slid the mic onto the shelf, tucking it behind the lunchbox where Tim wouldn't see it from a casual glance. Yeah, Tim said into the phone. I'll check in after the next load. Tell your boss to relax. Marcus withdrew his hand and let the locker door settle back into place, not quite closed, just how it had been. He turned to leave, and his foot caught on something on the floor. A metal water bottle rolled with a hollow clank. Tim spun around. Marcus's heart stopped. What are you doing in here? Tim demanded. His eyes flicked to the knocked-over bottle, then to Marcus's face. Bathroom, Marcus stammered, gesturing vaguely toward the back. Didn't know you were. Tim's gaze narrowed. For a second, Marcus was sure he'd walk straight to the locker, rip it open, and find the mic. Instead, Tim stepped closer, anger simmering. You really like being in places you don't belong, don't you? Marcus forced himself not to look at the locker. Door was open. I thought. You don't think, Tim snapped. You're here to walk in circles and look tired. That's it. He jabbed a finger into Marcus's chest. You pull another stunt like this, and I don't care who sent you. I'll make sure you disappear between shifts. Marcus nodded quickly, eyes wide. Won't happen again. Get out, Tim growled. Marcus obeyed, every nerve screaming as he crossed the room. He could feel Tim's gaze burning between his shoulder blades, waiting for him to glance back at the locker. He didn't. In the hallway, he let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and walked straight to the security office. Derek was waiting. One look at Marcus's face, and he closed the blinds the rest of the way. "Well?" Derek asked. "It's in his locker," Marcus said. He was on the phone, talking about cuts, about your boy at Bay 4, about Reaper sniffing around. He didn't say names, but it's enough to listen, Derek finished. He took a small receiver out of his drawer, clicked it on, and a faint hum filled the room. Static, then Tim's voice, muffled but clear enough. "Told you, he's just some stray Reaper picked up. Kid's scared of his own shadow. He won't be a problem as long as he doesn't grow a conscience." Marcus flinched. Hearing himself dismissed, so casually stung more than he expected. "If he steps out of line, I'll handle it," Tim continued. "You just make sure your boys are ready. One more run, then we're out. Reaper can scream all he wants." Derek's eyes met Marcus's. "That's enough." "Enough for what?" Marcus asked, though he knew the answer. "Enough for Reaper to stop sniffing and start biting," Derek said quietly. Marcus looked down at his hands, still slightly trembling. He'd wanted to help. He'd just handed Tim his death sentence. If your stomach dropped hearing that, like and subscribe so you don't miss how this ends. Reaper didn't come to the docks himself. He didn't need to. By the time Marcus rode back to the clubhouse, the sun was dragging itself over the horizon, bleaching the sky a pale gray. He felt wrung out, physically exhausted, emotionally hollow. The bike's engine buzzed under him like a swarm of bees he couldn't shake off. The garage door was open. Bikes were already lined up, engines ticking as they cooled. Inside, the air felt different, tighter, hungrier. Lily stood near the wall, arms wrapped around herself. When she saw Marcus, she pushed away and walked toward him fast. "You're back," she said, relief flooding her features. Then her eyes searched his face. "Are you okay?" "I'm in one piece," Marcus said. "Can't say the same for my nerves." Reaper stood by the workbench, Snake and two other bikers flanking him. A phone sat on the bench, speaker facing up. Tim's voice leaked faintly from it, still talking, boasting, complaining, digging his own grave without realizing it. Reaper's gaze snapped to Marcus. "We heard enough," he said. Derek sent the recording. Marcus swallowed. "Then you know." Reaper nodded once. "Tim's been selling us out. He set up the hit on Lily's route. Fed info to the same crew that worked you over. And he thought he'd get away with it." Lily's jaw clenched. "What are you going to do to him?" Reaper's eyes flicked to her, then back to Marcus. "What do you think?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Reaper stepped closer to Marcus, studying him like a mechanic examines a newly installed part. "You had chances to run," he said. "You had chances to keep your head down, pretend you saw nothing. Instead, you walked straight into Tim's locker room with that mic. How do you know I didn't just trip into the wrong door?" Marcus asked, trying for humor and failing. "Because you're still alive," Reaper said flatly. "Tim doesn't let accidents walk away." He paused. "You did good." The words landed heavier on Marcus's chest than any punch. Snake snorted. "So what now?" "We pay Tim a visit." Reaper's gaze hardened. "We settle the debt." He turned back to Marcus. "You started this when you stepped into that alley. You dragged us into this when you stayed. So you're going to finish it with us." Lily stepped forward. "He doesn't have to." "Yes, he does," Reaper said. "He's one of us now, whether we like it or not." Marcus looked between them. Lily's fear, Reaper's iron certainty, Snake's eager anticipation. He thought of Tim's voice in the locker room, of Scar Eyes shaking hands over his near death, of being no one under a bridge, waiting to be forgotten. "Where is he?" Marcus asked quietly. Reaper's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Derek stalled him, called in a fake security audit. "Tim thinks he's going to talk his way out of paperwork." Snake chuckled. "Instead, he's about to meet us." Reaper grabbed his helmet from the bench. "Gear up. We ride now. No delays." He pointed at Marcus. "You ride with me. If you fall off, you walk home." Marcus managed a weak smirk. "You planning on hitting every pothole in the city?" "Depends how much you talk," Reaper said. Outside, engines roared to life. The sound shook Marcus's bones, but this time, it didn't feel entirely like fear. It felt like momentum, like the world had finally decided to drag him into the center instead of leaving him on the edges. He swung up behind Reaper, hands gripping the back of the seat. Lily watched from the doorway, eyes shining with a mix of dread and something like pride. The bikes rolled out as one, a pack of metal and noise and inevitability. At the docks, Derek waited by the gate. He didn't look surprised to see them. "Office," he said to Reaper, jerking his chin toward the security building. "He's inside. Thinks he's about to get yelled at for misfiled reports." Reaper nodded, every line of his body coiled. The bikers fanned out around the lot, some blocking exit routes, others simply standing in ways that said no one should ask questions. Marcus followed Reaper and Snake into the office. The air inside felt thick. Tim was at the desk, arms spread in a mock-innocent gesture. "Look, Derek, I told you." He stopped when he saw the patches. Then he saw Marcus. For the first time, real fear cracked through his bravado. "You," Tim said. "You little." Reaper stepped between them, the room shrinking around his presence. "You've been busy," he said calmly. "Phones, side deals, selling routes to men who put hands on my daughter." Tim's gaze flicked to Derek. "You wired me?" Derek didn't answer. He didn't have to. Tim laughed once, sharp and brittle. "What? You gonna drag me out back and throw me in the river? You got no proof that holds up anywhere that matters." Reaper tilted his head. "You think I care about courts?" He pulled the phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. Tim's own voice filled the room. Reaper sniffing. "One more run, then we're out. Reaper can scream all he wants." Reaper stopped the playback. The silence that followed was louder than the recording. "You talked," Reaper said quietly. "About my routes. About my people. About my girl." Tim's face drained of color. It was just business. They were going to hit someone. Better your crates than your crew, right? You're always talking about survival. I was surviving. Reaper's jaw flexed. "You don't survive by handing my family to strangers." He turned slightly, not taking his eyes off Tim. "Marcus." Marcus stiffened. "Yeah. You saw his work at the docks. You felt it in that alley. You got the beating he paid for," Reaper said. "If this were your decision, what would you say he deserves?" The question hung there like a sentence waiting to be written. Marcus's first instinct was to step back, to say it wasn't his place. But the memory of boots slamming into his ribs, of Lily's scream, of Tim's hand on his vest at the catwalk railing, all of it rose up at once. "He wanted me blind or dead," Marcus said slowly. "He was fine with Lily getting grabbed, as long as his cut came through. He doesn't care who gets hurt as long as it isn't him." He met Tim's eyes. "If you let him walk, he'll just do it to someone else." A long breath left Reaper's chest. "That's what I thought." He stepped closer to Tim, his voice dropping to a low growl. "You had chances. You could have come clean. You could have remembered who fed you, who kept you on payroll when you were one screw up from being thrown out." Tim's bravado crumbled. "Please," he said. "Reaper, listen." "No," Reaper said. "You listen when you dropped my name on the phone. You listen when you said I'd scream all I wanted. Now you live with the echo." He looked at Snake. "Take him." What happened next didn't need details. The bikers moved with grim efficiency. Tim went from begging to cursing to crying in less than a minute. Marcus didn't watch all of it. He stepped outside, lungs burning, eyes fixed on the water lapping against the pilings. The wind felt colder now, but there was a strange steadiness in his chest. Footsteps approached. Lily. He didn't know how she'd gotten here so fast, but she stood beside him, jaw clenched, eyes shining. "Is it over?" she asked. "For him," Marcus said. "For us? I don't know." She looked at him. "Do you regret it?" He thought about it. About the bridge, the alley, the catwalk, the locker room. About Tim's hand on his vest, and Reaper asking, "If this were your decision?" "No," Marcus said. "He chose this a long time ago. I just helped everyone see it." She nodded slowly. "You changed everything, you know that?" "I just stepped into a fight," Marcus said. "That's what changed everything," she replied. "Most people walk away. You didn't." Behind them, engines began to rumble again. The work was done. The message had been sent. Reaper emerged from the office, wiping his hands on a rag that was more symbolic than necessary. His gaze landed on Marcus. "You held up your end," Reaper said. "Debt's paid." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's it, Reaper said. "You don't owe me anymore." Marcus waited for the rest, for the but, for the new condition, the fresh chain. It didn't come. You walk if you want, Reaper continued. Go back to whatever life you had. Bridge, streets, ghosts. Or, he looked at the rows of bikes, at the men waiting, at Lily standing a little closer to Marcus than before. You stay? Not because you owe me. Because you choose to. Choice. Marcus had made a lot of choices without thinking. This one, he let sit in his chest for a moment. The docks, the clubhouse, the roar of engines, the risk, the danger, and the fact that, for the first time in years, someone looked at him and saw more than a problem to move along. If your heart wants to see where he goes from here, like and subscribe so this story doesn't end alone. Marcus met Reaper's eyes. If I stay, what am I? Reaper's mouth twitched. You're Marcus, the kid who took a beating for my daughter and didn't break when the world tried to finish the job. He jerked his chin toward an empty spot in the lineup. We're short one security contact now. Someone has to make sure nobody ever tries this again. Marcus looked at Lily. She smiled, small but real. Then I stay, he said. Reaper nodded once, like he'd already known the answer. Get him a real jacket, Snake. No more borrowed vests. As the engines roared back to life and the sun climbed higher over the docks, Marcus realized his life hadn't been saved in that alley. It had been interrupted. Saved was what he was doing now, standing on solid ground, choosing where to stand, who to stand with. He wasn't invisible under a bridge anymore. He was Marcus, who had stepped into the worst kind of danger and somehow walked out with a family that ran on steel, loyalty, and the kind of brutal honesty that didn't leave room for pretending. And whether the road ahead was smooth or violent, one thing was certain. This time, if the world tried to beat him down again, he wouldn't be facing it alone.